At 75, she was thrown out with nothing, until a locked basement exposed a secret powerful men had buried for decades. Evicted at 75. With nothing, she opened a locked basement. Then a Navy SEAL and dog found the truth. By sunset, Evelyn Carter had lost her home, her family, and everything she owned, except one old key. Deep in the Appalachian hills, that key opened a forgotten cellar and uncovered a truth that refused to stay buried. But she wasn't the only one who found it. Comment 1 or 0 and tell me where you're watching from. The gravel crunched under Evelyn Carter's worn shoes as she stood at the edge of the driveway, her thin hands wrapped tightly around the handle of a faded brown suitcase. The late afternoon sun stretched long shadows across the rolling hills of West Virginia, painting the Appalachian foothills in soft gold, but none of it felt warm. Not today. In front of her, a white donation truck idled with a low mechanical hum, its back doors wide open like a mouth swallowing everything she had left of her life. Two men she had never seen before moved in and out of the farmhouse, carrying boxes, chairs, a small wooden dresser that her husband had built with his own hands over 40 years ago. They handled it like it was nothing, just another object to be sorted, priced, or discarded. Evelyn didn't say a word. She couldn't. Her voice had already been used up earlier that morning. "Mom, we talked about this," Daniel had said, standing just a few feet away from her now, but feeling farther than he ever had in his life. He kept his eyes fixed somewhere past her shoulder, like she wasn't really there. "You can't stay here anymore. The sale's already finalized." Sale. Such a simple word. Such a permanent one. Melissa stood beside him, arms crossed tightly over her chest, her lips pressed into a thin line. She looked uncomfortable, but not enough to stop any of it. Not enough to change anything. "They're tearing the place down next week," she added, her tone clipped, almost rehearsed. "It's not safe for you here anyway." Evelyn turned her head slowly, her eyes moving across the familiar outline of the farmhouse, the chipped white paint, the crooked porch railing, the wind chimes that hadn't sung since the breeze died hours ago. 23 years. That's how long she had lived there after her husband passed. Long enough to believe it was still hers. Long enough to forget how quickly something could be taken away. "I paid every bill," Evelyn said quietly, her voice trembling despite her effort to steady it. "Every month. On time." Daniel exhaled sharply, as if the conversation itself was exhausting him. "It wasn't your property, Mom. It never was. The title was in Uncle Ray's name, and when he passed, it went to the estate. You know that." Estate. Another word that didn't belong to her. Another word that erased her life. "You should have planned better," he added, his tone flattening into something colder. "At some point, you have to take responsibility for where you end up." The words landed heavier than anything being carried into that truck. Evelyn felt them settle deep in her chest, pressing against something fragile and already cracked. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. There was no point. Melissa glanced at her watch. "They need the driveway cleared in the next 30 minutes, she said. "The buyers are sending someone to inspect before sunset." Before sunset. That was the deadline. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Today. Right now. Evelyn looked down at her suitcase. It was small. Too small. It held a few clothes, a photograph, and a folded shawl that still carried the faint scent of lavender from years ago. Everything else. Her dishes, her sewing machine, the quilt she had stitched by hand during the winter after her husband died. It was all disappearing into that truck. Or worse. Into strangers' hands. Or the trash. A gust of wind swept across the yard, lifting dust from the gravel and carrying it toward the road. Beyond the fence line, a few neighbors stood quietly, pretending to check their mail or tend to nothing at all. They were watching. Of course they were. Small towns always watched. Mrs. Garrison from across the road held her porch railing, her eyes filled with something close to sympathy. But she didn't move, didn't speak, didn't step forward. No one did. Because this wasn't their problem. This was just something happening, and people had learned long ago that it was easier to look away than to get involved. Evelyn lifted her gaze one last time to the front door. The door she had walked through every day. The door her husband had carried her across when they first moved in. The door that was now standing open, empty, waiting for someone else. A stranger. "Mom," Daniel said again, a little sharper now. "You need to go." Evelyn nodded slowly, not because she agreed, but because she understood. There was nothing left here for her. Not the house, not the people standing in front of it, not even the memories, now that they had been stripped down and boxed away like unwanted clutter. She adjusted her grip on the suitcase and stepped off the driveway, her shoes crunching softly against the gravel one last time. No one stopped her. No one called her name. Behind her, the truck doors slammed shut with a heavy metallic echo. It sounded final. Evelyn didn't turn around. She walked down the narrow dirt road that curved along the base of the hills, her shadow stretching long in front of her as the sun dipped lower in the sky. Each step felt heavier than the last, not because of the distance, but because of the realization settling in her bones. She had nowhere to go, no room waiting, no key in her pocket, no one expecting her, just the road and the quiet. The mountains rose in the distance, dark and steady, their outlines cutting into the fading sky. Somewhere beyond them, tucked deep into the wooded ridge, there was a place she hadn't seen in 50 years, a place her grandmother had once called something strange, something she hadn't understood back then. A sanctuary. Evelyn stopped for a moment, her breath catching as the memory surfaced, clear and sudden. "When you lose everything," her grandmother had whispered, her frail hand gripping Evelyn's tighter than she thought possible. "You go there." Evelyn swallowed hard, her throat dry. She tightened her hold on the suitcase, and then, without looking back, she stepped off the road and into the tree line. The light faded quickly under the canopy. The air grew cooler. And for the first time since she had been told to leave, something shifted inside her. Not hope, not yet, but something quieter. Something that felt like direction. Behind her, the farmhouse disappeared from view. Ahead of her, the forest waited, and somewhere deep within it, so did the past. The forest swallowed the last of the daylight as Evelyn Carter stepped beneath the tall Appalachian pines. The dirt path ahead of her was barely visible, just a narrow trail pressed into the earth by years of rain and neglect. Branches brushed against her coat as she moved forward, slow and careful, her suitcase bumping awkwardly against her leg with every step. The air felt different here, cooler, heavier, like the woods were holding on to something that the rest of the world had forgotten. Evelyn paused for a moment, steadying herself against the rough bark of a tree. Her breath came shallow, her chest tight, not from the walk, but from everything that had led her here. The silence pressed in around her, broken only by the faint rustle of leaves and the distant call of a crow somewhere deeper in the valley. She hadn't been here in decades. Not since she was a young woman, before life had become something measured in loss instead of years. Back then, the path had been clearer. Back then, there had been laughter. Now there was only memory. She moved again, pushing forward, her eyes scanning the terrain ahead. The land sloped gently upward, the forest thinning just enough for a faint outline to take shape against the darkening sky. Stone. Old, weathered stone. Her heart skipped. There it was, half buried into the hillside like it had grown there, an old cellar structure, its curved roof covered in moss and creeping vines, blending almost seamlessly into the earth. Time had done its work well. If you didn't know what you were looking for, you'd walk right past it. Most people did. Most people had always ignored it. That old place? Daniel had once said years ago, laughing when she mentioned it. It's just a hole in the ground, Mom. Nothing worth keeping. Nothing worth keeping. Evelyn stepped closer, her shoes crunching softly over fallen leaves. But her grandmother had never seen it that way. The sanctuary. That's what she had called it. Not a cellar, not storage, not something to forget. A sanctuary. Evelyn reached the base of the structure and stopped, her hand trembling slightly as she brushed away a layer of damp leaves from the old wooden door. It was smaller than she remembered, reinforced with rusted iron bands that had darkened with age. The hinges were stiff, the surface worn and cracked from years of rain and snow. And there, hanging from the latch, was the lock, thick, corroded, still holding. Evelyn stared at it for a long moment. 50 years. That's how long it had been. 50 years since her grandmother had pressed that small brass key into her hand with a grip that didn't match her frail body. For when you need it, she had whispered, her voice barely audible but filled with urgency. Not before. Only when you've lost everything. Evelyn swallowed hard, her throat tightening. Lost everything. The words echoed now with a weight she hadn't understood back then. She slowly set her suitcase down on the ground, the soft thud barely breaking the silence. Her fingers moved to her coat pocket, searching, feeling the familiar shape that had stayed with her all these years. She had never thrown it away, never questioned why she kept it. Just carried it, waiting. Her fingers closed around the small brass key. It was cold, heavier than it should have been. Evelyn pulled it out and held it in the fading light, turning it slightly between her fingers. The metal was tarnished, the edges worn smooth from time, but it was unmistakable. The same key, the same promise. A wind moved through the trees, low and steady, whispering through the branches above her. It carried with it a scent she hadn't expected. Lavender. Faint. Almost gone. But still there. Evelyn closed her eyes for just a second, then opened them again. She stepped forward. The lock hung still, silent, waiting. Her hand trembled as she lifted the key and guided it toward the rusted keyhole. For a moment, it wouldn't go in. The metal resisted, years of corrosion pushing back against her. She tightened her grip, tried again. This time it slid in, barely. Evelyn took a breath, then turned it. At first, nothing happened. Then, a sharp, grinding crack split through the quiet woods. The sound echoed off the hillside, louder than it should have been, like something long sealed had just been forced awake. The lock gave. Evelyn flinched slightly, her heart pounding as she pulled the key free and let the broken mechanism fall into her hand. It was open. She stood there for a long moment, staring at the door. No turning back now. The world behind her was gone. And whatever waited inside this place, it was all she had left. Evelyn reached out slowly, her fingers wrapping around the old iron handle. It was cold and rough beneath her touch. She pulled. The door resisted at first, swollen from years of damp and neglect. It groaned low and deep, like it didn't want to move, like it had grown into the stone itself. Evelyn braced her feet, pulled harder. The hinges shrieked. Then, suddenly, it gave. The door opened just enough for a breath of air to rush out. It was stale, cool, carrying the scent of earth, wood, and something older, something preserved. Evelyn stepped back slightly, her chest tightening as the darkness inside seemed to stretch outward, swallowing the last of the daylight at the entrance. For a moment, she hesitated. Fear crept in quietly, not of what might be inside, but of what it might mean. Because if her grandmother had been right, then this place wasn't empty. It had been waiting. For her. Evelyn bent down slowly, picking up her suitcase again. Her hands were steadier now, though her heart still pounded hard against her ribs. She moved forward. One step, then another. And as she crossed the threshold, the fading light behind her narrowed, the forest slipping away into shadow. Inside, the cellar opened up around her. Stone walls curved overhead, reinforced with old timber beams that had somehow survived the passing decades. Dust hung in the air, drifting slowly through the dim light that filtered in from the open doorway. Shelves lined the walls, most empty, some holding old glass jars clouded with age. And at the far end of the cellar, something sat in the darkness, large, still, waiting. Evelyn stopped. Her breath caught in her throat. She couldn't see it clearly yet. But she knew. Somehow, she knew. This place had not been forgotten. It had been preserved. And whatever rested in that shadow at the back of the cellar was never meant for anyone else to find. Only her. But miles away, beneath the sky just beginning to dim into twilight, another man had been carrying his own past for far too long. The engine of the old pickup truck hummed steadily as it rolled along a winding mountain road carved through the Appalachian hills. The headlights cut a narrow path through the growing darkness, illuminating stretches of cracked pavement, broken guardrails, and dense forest pressing in on both sides. Behind the wheel sat Logan Hayes, 48 years old, broad-shouldered, weathered, and quiet in the way only certain men become after seeing too much. His eyes stayed fixed on the road ahead, but they weren't really seeing it, not fully. Because part of him was somewhere else, somewhere louder, hotter. The sound of distant thunder in the mountains triggered it first, a low rumble that rolled across the sky. But in Logan's mind, it wasn't thunder. It was something else. Explosions. The flash came next, lightning splitting across the horizon, sharp and sudden. For a brief second, his grip tightened on the steering wheel, too tight. His breathing shifted, faster, shallower. The road blurred just slightly as memory pushed forward without permission. Sand, heat, shouting, the crack of gunfire that never really left him. Logan. The voice didn't come from the past. It came from right beside him, low, grounded, present. Logan blinked hard, pulling himself back. A large German shepherd sat in the passenger seat, alert and steady, his dark eyes fixed on Logan's face. The dog's ears were forward, posture tense but controlled. Titan. He hadn't moved, hadn't barked, hadn't panicked. He never did. But he had leaned closer. Just enough to remind Logan where he was. The truck, the road, the mountains. Now. Logan exhaled slowly, his grip loosening as his heartbeat began to settle. "I'm good," he muttered, though his voice was rough. Titan didn't move, didn't look away. Not until Logan's breathing evened out again. Then, slowly, the dog relaxed back into his seat, but his attention never drifted far. It never did. Logan reached over, his hand resting briefly on the thick fur along Titan's neck. The contact was grounding. Solid. Real. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I know." The truck continued forward, climbing higher into the hills before the road curved down toward a small roadside diner tucked between a gas pump and a weathered wooden sign that read, "Blue Ridge Diner." The neon light flickered faintly, buzzing in the growing dark. Logan pulled into the gravel lot and cut the engine. For a moment, he just sat there, listening. The quiet after the engine stopped always felt louder than anything else. Too loud. Too empty. Titan shifted beside him, then nudged Logan's arm once. A reminder. Move. Stay in motion. Logan nodded slightly and opened the door. The cool evening air hit him as he stepped out, carrying the scent of pine and distant rain. Gravel crunched under his boots as Titan jumped down beside him, immediately scanning the area with calm precision. Always working, even now. Inside, the diner was warm and dimly lit, the soft hum of conversation filling the space. A few locals sat at the counter, coffee mugs in hand, their voices low and steady. Logan took a seat at the far end, Titan settling quietly at his feet. The waitress gave him a quick nod. "Coffee?" "Yeah," Logan said. Black. Always black. He wrapped his hands around the cup when it came, letting the heat seep into his fingers. It helped. Small things helped. Across the counter, two men in worn jackets leaned close, their conversation just loud enough to carry. "Telling you, she's up there right now." "Up where?" "That old ridge behind Carter's place. The burned-out property. You know the one." A pause, then a scoff. "You mean that cellar thing? Nobody's been up there in years." "Exactly. And now some old woman's sleeping in it." Logan's hand stilled slightly around the cup. "What old woman?" "Evelyn Carter. Got kicked out today. Son sold the land, I heard. Didn't even give her a place to go." Another pause. "That ain't right." "Yeah, well, happens more than people think." Logan's jaw tightened. He didn't look up, didn't react. But Titan did. The dog's head lifted slowly, ears sharpening, eyes locking onto Logan for a brief moment before shifting toward the voices. Something had changed. Subtle, but clear. Titan stood. Not abruptly, not aggressively, just decided. Logan felt it immediately. He looked down. "What is it?" Titan didn't bark, didn't whine. He simply stepped forward, his posture firm, attention fixed toward the door. Then he looked back at Logan. Once, waiting. Logan frowned slightly. Easy. But Titan didn't sit, didn't relax. He stayed standing, focused, insistent. That wasn't random. It never was. Logan had learned that the hard way, more than once. He glanced back toward the men at the counter. "She's gonna freeze up there if the weather turns," one of them said. "No power, no heat, just dirt and stone." Another low rumble of thunder rolled through the mountains outside. Logan's fingers tightened slightly around the coffee cup again. Not fear this time. Something else. A pull. A quiet, familiar instinct he hadn't listened to in a long time. Don't ignore it. He stood, left the coffee half-finished on the counter. "How much?" he asked. "On the house," the waitress said, glancing at Titan. "Dog like that. He knows things." Logan gave a small nod. Then he turned. Titan was already moving toward the door. Outside, the air had grown heavier, the sky darker now, clouds thickening over the ridge. Logan paused beside the truck, looking up toward the mountains, toward the direction the men had pointed. Somewhere out there in the trees, an old woman was alone in a place no one cared about, and his dog wouldn't let it go. Logan exhaled slowly, then opened the truck door. "All right," he said quietly. Titan jumped in without hesitation. Logan started the engine and turned the wheel toward the ridge. The road ahead narrowed quickly, disappearing into darkness as the first drops of rain began to fall against the windshield. Whatever waited up there. Titan had already made the decision. Now Logan just had to follow. The truck's headlights cut through the darkness as rain began to fall harder, tapping steadily against the windshield. The narrow road twisted upward into the ridge, barely wide enough for one vehicle. Mud and loose gravel shifted beneath the tires as Logan drove slowly, his eyes scanning every turn, every shadow between the trees. This part of the mountain didn't get much traffic, didn't get much attention at all, which made it the perfect place for things to be forgotten or hidden. Thunder rolled again, louder now, echoing through the hills like something alive. Logan didn't flinch this time. His focus stayed sharp, steady, his breathing controlled. Beside him, Titan sat upright, alert, not restless, not anxious, focused. The dog's nose lifted slightly, catching something in the air, something Logan couldn't sense yet. "We're close," Logan muttered. Titan didn't respond. He didn't need to. A few minutes later, the road gave out entirely, dissolving into a rough clearing at the edge of the forest. Logan eased the truck to a stop, the engine idling low as rain streaked down the glass. Beyond the clearing, the land rose into dense woods, dark, quiet, unwelcoming. Logan killed the engine. For a moment, there was only the sound of rain and distant thunder. Then Titan moved. He jumped down from the truck before Logan even opened his own door, landing lightly on the wet ground and immediately heading toward the tree line. "Hey!" Logan called, stepping out quickly. "Titan!" The dog didn't run. He didn't bolt. He moved with purpose, glancing back once to make sure Logan was following. That was the signal. Not panic, not urgency, direction. Logan grabbed a flashlight from the truck and clicked it on, the beam cutting through the darkness in a narrow cone of white. He shut the door behind him and followed Titan into the woods. The ground was uneven, slick with rain, and covered in roots that twisted like veins through the earth. Branches brushed against his jacket as he moved forward, the forest closing in around him. The air smelled of wet leaves, pine, and something older, something still. Titan slowed slightly, his pace adjusting to Logan's steps, but his focus never wavered. His ears stayed forward, his body low and controlled. They moved uphill, not far, but far enough that the world behind them disappeared completely. Then, Titan stopped, completely still. Logan stepped up beside him, raising the flashlight. And there it was. Half hidden in the hillside, a stone, old, curved, almost part of the earth itself. A cellar. Logan's eyes narrowed slightly as he took it in. The structure was ancient by comparison to anything else around it. Weathered stone, thick wooden door reinforced with rusted iron bands. Moss crept along the edges, vines wrapping around the sides like they were trying to reclaim it. If you didn't know it was there, you'd never see it. Titan stepped forward slowly, approaching the door. Then he paused again. This time his posture shifted. Subtle, but different. Not alert, not defensive. Something closer to recognition. Logan felt it. That quiet shift in the air. The kind that made the back of your neck tighten for reasons you couldn't explain. He moved closer, the beam of the flashlight settling on the door. The lock hung broken. Recently, Not rusted through, not fallen apart from age. Broken. From the outside. Logan crouched slightly, examining it. Fresh marks, the metal still sharp where it had snapped. Someone had opened this. Not long ago. Titan let out a low, almost inaudible sound in his throat. Not a growl, not a warning. Just awareness. "Easy," Logan murmured, his voice low and steady. He stood slowly, his grip tightening around the flashlight. The door itself was slightly open, just enough for darkness to spill out into the rain. Logan stepped closer, paused, listened. Nothing. No movement. No voices. Just the steady drip of water and the distant rumble of thunder rolling through the mountains. He reached out, his hand closing around the iron handle. Cold. Solid. Real. For a brief second, something flickered through his mind. A memory. A door not unlike this one. Different place, different time. Same feeling. What's inside matters. He pushed. The door groaned as it moved, the sound deep and heavy, echoing into the space beyond. The beam of his flashlight cut into the darkness. Stone walls. Wooden beams. Dust drifting slowly through the air. And a figure. Logan froze. Titan moved first. The dog stepped forward, slow and careful, his posture lowering slightly. Not aggressive, not defensive, gentle. The figure shifted. Barely. Then a weak voice broke through the silence. "Hello?" Evelyn. Logan exhaled, tension easing just slightly as he stepped inside. The air was cool, damp, carrying the scent of earth and something faintly familiar. Lavender, maybe. Evelyn Carter sat on a low wooden crate near the wall, her suitcase beside her. Her face was pale, her hands trembling slightly, but her eyes were clear. Alert. Watching. Titan approached her carefully, his tail low, movements deliberate. He stopped just short of her, then slowly lowered himself to the ground in front of her. A silent offering. Evelyn blinked, startled at first. Then her hand lifted, hesitated, and gently rested against the side of Titan's neck. The dog didn't move, didn't pull away. He stayed. Logan stepped closer, lowering the flashlight slightly so it didn't shine directly in her eyes. "You all right?" he asked. Evelyn nodded faintly. I think so." Her voice was thin but steady enough. Logan glanced around the cellar, taking in the details, the shelves, the jars, the structure itself, and then his light shifted toward the back. Something sat there. Large, solid, unmoving. A trunk. Different from everything else in the room. Not just old, purposeful. Logan's eyes narrowed slightly as the beam settled on it. Military green. Faded. But unmistakable. He didn't say anything. Not yet. Because something about this place, about that trunk, didn't feel random. Didn't feel forgotten. It felt left. Waiting. And for reasons he couldn't yet explain. Titan didn't look away from it either. The beam of Logan's flashlight lingered on the military green trunk at the back of the cellar, its edges worn but its shape intact, as if time itself had chosen not to touch it. The rest of the space felt abandoned. Dust, decay, forgotten things. But that trunk felt preserved, important. Logan lowered the light slightly and turned his attention back to Evelyn. She looked fragile in the dim glow, her silver hair slightly damp from the rain, her shoulders hunched beneath a thin coat that wasn't meant for cold nights in the mountains. But her eyes, those hadn't faded. They were sharp, watching him, watching Titan, watching everything. "I didn't expect anyone to come," she said quietly, her hand still resting against Titan's neck. Logan nodded once. "Didn't plan on it." That was the truth. He hadn't. But something had brought him here anyway. Evelyn gave a faint, tired smile, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Well, I suppose that makes two of us." Titan shifted slightly, pressing closer to her leg, his body warm and steady. Evelyn's fingers curled gently into his fur without thinking, as if she had known him longer than just a few minutes. The dog didn't move, didn't pull away. He stayed exactly where he was. Logan noticed that. Not just the closeness, the decision. Titan had made up his mind. Logan exhaled quietly and crouched down, setting the flashlight on a nearby crate so it cast a wider glow across the cellar. The shadows softened slightly, revealing more of the space. Old wooden beams overhead, shelves lined with cloudy jars, a folded blanket tucked into one corner that looked like it hadn't been touched in years. "This place," Logan said, glancing around. "You been here before?" Evelyn nodded slowly. "A long time ago." Her gaze drifted past him, toward the deeper shadows of the cellar. "My grandmother used to bring me here when I was young, said it was the only place where the world couldn't reach her." Logan leaned back slightly, listening. "She called it her sanctuary," Evelyn continued. "I never really understood what she meant. Not back then." A pause. "Guess I do now." Thunder rolled again outside, closer this time, followed by a steady patter of rain against the hillside above them. The sound filtered down through the stone, muffled but constant. Safe, in a strange way. Logan stood again, scanning the room with a soldier's eye, checking corners, entry points, anything out of place. "You got food?" he asked. Evelyn shook her head. "No." "Water?" "Just a little, from earlier." Logan nodded, already reaching into the side compartment of his pack. He pulled out a bottle and handed it to her. "Drink slow." Evelyn accepted it with both hands, her fingers trembling slightly. She took a small sip, then another, closing her eyes briefly, as if the simple act grounded her. "Thank you," she said. Logan didn't respond right away. He didn't need to. Titan shifted again, his body relaxing just slightly as Evelyn drank. But his attention never fully left her, or the trunk. Always the trunk. Logan followed the dog's gaze again. That same pull, stronger now. He stepped toward it. Slowly. The wooden floor creaked faintly beneath his boots as he moved deeper into the cellar. The air felt cooler back here, heavier somehow, like it had settled and stayed undisturbed for decades. The trunk sat against the far wall, solid, unmoved. Up close, the details became clearer. Military markings, faded but still visible. Stenciled numbers, a unit code partially worn away. Logan's jaw tightened slightly. This wasn't random. This wasn't just some old storage chest left behind. This had purpose. History. He crouched beside it, running his hand lightly across the surface. Dust came away beneath his fingers, revealing more of the paint underneath. Titan stood, without being called. He moved to Logan's side, his posture alert again, his nose lowering toward the trunk. Then, he pawed at it, once, soft. Logan glanced at him. Easy. But Titan didn't stop. He pawed again, this time more insistent. Not aggressive, not frantic, focused. Logan studied the dog for a moment. Titan wasn't reacting to scent alone. This was something else. Recognition. Or instinct so deep it felt like memory. Evelyn's voice came from behind them, softer now. "What is it?" Logan didn't answer right away. He reached for the latch. It wasn't locked, just sealed by time. He hesitated. Only for a second. Then he lifted it. The metal creaked faintly as it gave. Titan leaned in slightly, his body tense. Logan placed both hands on the lid and paused. Because something about this moment felt bigger than it should have. Not just opening a box, not just curiosity. Something else. Something waiting. He pushed. The lid opened slowly, the hinges stiff but functional, releasing a faint rush of air that smelled of oil, paper, and something preserved far better than the rest of the cellar. Inside, dark fabric, carefully folded, wrapped. Logan reached in, pulling back the top layer. Underneath, documents, sealed envelopes, a file folder stamped with military insignia, and something else. A name. Clear. Unmistakable. Logan's breath caught. Just for a second. His eyes locked on it. Colonel Richard Vance. The name sat there like a weight pressing into the room itself. Behind him, Evelyn shifted slightly. "That name," she said slowly. "I haven't heard that in years." Logan didn't look back, because something inside him had already begun to move. Something old, something unfinished. Titan let out a low, quiet sound. Not fear, not warning. Recognition. And suddenly, this wasn't just Evelyn's story anymore. It never had been. The name sat in Logan's hands like something alive. Colonel Richard Vance. Even in the dim light of the cellar, the letters felt sharp, deliberate, like they had been meant to be seen again someday. Logan stared at the document longer than he should have, long enough for something deep inside him to shift. Behind him, Evelyn slowly stood, her movements careful, her body still weak, but her attention fully locked on what Logan had found. "Let me see," she said quietly. Logan hesitated for a fraction of a second, then handed her the top folder. Evelyn's fingers trembled as she took it, her eyes scanning the page slowly, as if each word carried weight far beyond ink and paper. The silence stretched, heavy. Then, "I knew it." The words came out barely above a whisper. Not shock, not confusion. Recognition. Evelyn lowered the paper slightly, her eyes distant now, pulled back into a place she hadn't visited in decades. "They said he was a hero," she continued. "Said everything he did was for the country, for the people here." Logan watched her carefully. "And you didn't believe that?" he asked. Evelyn let out a quiet breath. "I didn't have the luxury of belief." She looked back down at the document. "They used his name to destroy my husband." The words landed quietly, but they didn't stay quiet. They filled the space. Logan's jaw tightened. "Start from the beginning," he said. Evelyn nodded slowly, her grip tightening around the folder. "It was 40 years ago," she began. "My husband, Thomas, he worked maintenance contracts on some of the land out here. Equipment, storage, supply chains. Nothing glamorous. Just honest work." Her voice remained steady, but her eyes didn't. "They started bringing in shipments, military equipment, supplies that weren't supposed to pass through civilian channels." Logan leaned slightly forward, listening. "Thomas noticed things didn't add up," Evelyn continued. "Inventory didn't match paperwork. Deliveries came at odd hours. He said it felt wrong. She swallowed. He reported it. A pause, then. That's when everything changed. Logan already knew where this was going, but he needed to hear it. He was accused, Evelyn said. Theft, misuse of equipment, selling parts off the books. Her voice cracked slightly this time. They said he was the one behind it. Logan's grip tightened on the edge of the trunk. And Colonel Vance? He asked. Evelyn gave a hollow laugh. He was the one who stood up in front of everyone and said it was true. Silence filled the cellar again, but this time it wasn't empty. It was thick. Angry. They believed him, Evelyn said. Of course they did. Decorated officer, respected man. Why wouldn't they? She looked up at Logan. My husband lost everything. His job, his reputation, his dignity. Her voice softened. And eventually, his will to keep fighting. The rain above them intensified, drumming harder against the earth. Logan exhaled slowly. Was there proof? He asked. Evelyn shook her head. Not that anyone was willing to see. She looked down at the documents again. But this, she whispered, this is different. Logan reached into the trunk, pulling out another sealed envelope, then another. Each one marked. Each one preserved. This wasn't random. This was intentional. Someone had gathered this, hidden it, protected it. For decades, Logan murmured. Titan shifted beside him, his body tense again, his eyes flicking between Logan, Evelyn, and the trunk. He stepped closer. Then suddenly, he pawed again, harder this time. Logan looked down. What is it? Titan didn't stop. He scratched at the inside side of the trunk, not the documents, but the base, the bottom panel. Logan frowned. Hold on. He moved the papers aside, revealing the wooden base beneath. It looked solid at first glance, but Titan's insistence didn't fade. Logan ran his fingers along the edge. There. A seam. Almost invisible. Hidden compartment, Logan muttered. He pressed down. Nothing. He shifted his grip, applying more pressure. Then, a soft click. The panel loosened. Logan lifted it carefully. Inside. More documents. But these were different. Sealed tighter. Marked with red ink, official, and on top, a photograph. Logan froze. The image was old, slightly faded, but still clear enough. Two men standing side by side in uniform. One was Colonel Vance, younger, but unmistakable. The other... Logan's breath stopped. His hand tightened around the edge of the photo. No, he whispered. Evelyn leaned closer. What is it? Logan didn't answer right away, because he already knew. He knew that face. Even after all these years, even after all the stories that never made sense. His father, standing right next to Colonel Vance, alive, smiling, before everything disappeared. Logan's chest tightened suddenly, his breathing shifting as something old and buried surged forward. Memories, questions, years of silence. Titan moved instantly. He pressed his body against Logan's leg, grounding him, anchoring him before the spiral could take hold. Logan closed his eyes briefly, inhaled, exhaled, held on to the present, then opened them again, slowly, carefully. This, Logan said, his voice low, controlled but strained. This isn't just about your husband. Evelyn looked at him, confusion giving way to realization. What do you mean? Logan held up the photograph. That's my father. The words settled into the room like a shockwave. Evelyn stared at the image, then back at Logan. Understanding hit her in pieces. Your father? She asked. Logan nodded once. He disappeared, he said. Years ago. They said he walked away, said he couldn't handle things anymore. His jaw tightened. I never believed that. He looked back down at the documents. Now the pieces were shifting, connecting. This wasn't just a false accusation. This was something bigger, something organized, something buried on purpose. Logan's eyes lifted slowly, meeting Evelyn's. They didn't just ruin lives, he said quietly. They erased them. The rain continued to fall above. The cellar remained still. But everything inside it had changed. Because now, they weren't just uncovering the past. They were standing inside it. And whatever had been hidden here was never meant to stay buried forever. The rain above the cellar softened into a steady rhythm, like the mountain itself was listening. Inside, the air had changed. What had once felt like shelter now felt like evidence. Logan sat back on his heels, the photograph still in his hand, his thumb brushing across the faded image as if trying to feel something through it, something real enough to hold on to. His father, standing there, alive. Part of something Logan had never been told the truth about. Across from him, Evelyn lowered herself slowly back onto the crate, her eyes fixed on the documents spread between them. Her breathing had steadied, but her face carried a different weight now. Not just memory, recognition. This wasn't just one lie, she said quietly. It was a whole story they built, piece by piece. Logan nodded once. Yeah. Titan remained close, positioned between them, his body angled slightly toward the cellar door, alert but calm. His ears flicked occasionally, catching sounds from outside. But he didn't move. He stayed grounded, so Logan could stay grounded too. Evelyn picked up one of the sealed envelopes from the hidden compartment, turning it carefully in her hands. This was meant to be found, she said, not lost. Logan glanced at her. You think your grandmother knew what this was? Evelyn hesitated, then nodded slowly. She knew enough. Her voice softened. She didn't trust anyone else with it. Logan leaned back slightly, running a hand across his face. That means she knew it was dangerous. Evelyn gave a faint, tired smile. In this town, truth was always dangerous. The words settled heavily between them. Logan reached for another document, unfolding it carefully. It was a report, typed, official-looking, stamped with a classification marking that had long since faded. He scanned the lines quickly at first, then slower. His jaw tightened. Supply logs, he said. Equipment moved off record, routed through civilian contracts. Evelyn leaned closer. That's exactly what Thomas said, she replied. He kept telling me something didn't match, that the numbers were wrong. Logan flipped to the next page. There it was again. Vance's name. Repeated. Signed. Authorized. This wasn't small, Logan muttered. This was organized. Evelyn nodded. And when Thomas spoke up, they made him the problem. Silence. Heavy. Logan looked back at the photograph in his hand. My dad, he said slowly. He was investigating something before he disappeared. Evelyn's eyes widened slightly. You're sure? Logan nodded. He didn't talk much about it, just said there were things people didn't want uncovered. Then one day, he paused, his voice tightening. He was gone. Titan shifted slightly, pressing closer. Logan's hand dropped instinctively to the dog's back, grounding himself again. They told us he left, Logan continued. Said he couldn't handle the pressure. Said he walked away from everything. He shook his head. I never bought it. Evelyn looked down at the photograph again, her expression changing. He didn't leave, she said quietly. He got too close. Logan met her eyes, and in that moment, they both understood. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't separate tragedies. This was one story, one lie, one system that had crushed anyone who stood in its way. Evelyn's hands tightened around the papers. For 40 years, she said, her voice trembling now, I let people believe my husband was a thief, a liar, a disgrace. Her eyes filled, but no tears fell. I buried it, because I didn't have proof, because no one would listen. She looked up at Logan. But this changes everything. Logan didn't respond right away, because something else had started to creep in. Not just anger, not just determination, but danger. His eyes shifted toward the cellar door. Titan noticed it too. The dog's head lifted slightly, his body going still again. What is it? Evelyn asked. Logan didn't answer immediately. He listened. At first, nothing. Then, faint, subtle, the sound of tires on gravel, somewhere beyond the trees. Logan's posture changed instantly. His shoulders squared, his focus sharpening. Stay here, he said quietly. He stood and moved toward the entrance, his steps controlled, silent. Titan followed. Not ahead, not behind. Beside. Logan reached the doorway and stopped just inside the shadows, his eyes adjusting to the dim light outside. Through the trees, barely visible between branches and rain. Headlights. Far off. But moving, slow, watching. Logan's jaw tightened. That's not random, he muttered. Titan let out a low, controlled growl. Not loud, not panicked. A warning. Logan stepped back into the cellar, his expression darker now. We're not alone out here, he said. Evelyn's breath caught. You think they know? Logan didn't sugarcoat it. If they don't, they will. The room shifted again, from discovery to threat. Logan looked down at the documents, then back toward the door. They buried this for a reason, he said, and people like that don't just walk away when something starts to surface. Evelyn straightened slightly, fear flickering, but not taking over. Then what do we do? Logan's answer came without hesitation. We don't hide it again. He looked back at the trunk, at the evidence, at the truth that had waited decades. We bring it into the open. Thunder cracked overhead, louder than before. The headlights outside disappeared behind the trees. But the message was clear. This wasn't over. It had just begun. And whatever had been buried here for 40 years was about to come back to life. The rain didn't stop. It thickened. Sheets of water rolled down the hillside, turning the narrow trail outside the cellar into slick mud. Wind pushed through the trees, bending branches and sending leaves skittering across the ground like whispers that refused to settle. Inside, the air had grown tighter, not from the storm, from what Logan had seen, from what Titan had felt. Logan moved quickly now, gathering the documents from the trunk with careful precision. He didn't rush, but every movement carried urgency. He slid the files into his pack, separating the most important pieces, securing them in waterproof sleeves like it was second nature, because it was. Evelyn watched him, her hands gripping the edge of the crate. "They're coming back, aren't they?" she asked. Logan didn't lie. "Yeah." Titan stood near the entrance, his body angled toward the door again, ears forward, listening beyond the rain. Not guessing, knowing. Logan zipped his pack and slung it over his shoulder. "We don't stay here tonight," he said. Evelyn hesitated. "But this place is already compromised," Logan cut in gently but firmly. "If someone was watching, they know this is where you are." The words landed hard, because they were true. Evelyn nodded slowly, pushing herself to stand. Her legs trembled slightly, but she steadied herself. "I can walk," she said. Logan gave a small nod. "I know." He grabbed the old blanket from the shelf and wrapped it around her shoulders, pulling it tight against the cold. "Stay close to me." Titan stepped in beside Evelyn immediately, his body brushing against her leg as if he had already taken responsibility for her safety. The three of them moved toward the door. Logan paused just before stepping out, his eyes scanning the darkness again. Nothing visible. But that didn't mean nothing was there. "Stick to my left," he said quietly. Evelyn nodded. They stepped into the rain. Cold hit instantly, soaking through fabric, turning the ground into something unstable beneath their feet. The forest felt different now, less like shelter, more like exposure. Every sound mattered, every shadow held weight. They moved carefully down the slope, Logan leading, Evelyn close behind, Titan staying tight at her side. Halfway down, Titan froze. Completely. Logan stopped instantly. "What is it?" Evelyn whispered. Titan's posture shifted. Not just alert. Locked. His gaze fixed somewhere ahead through the trees. Logan followed the line of sight. At first, nothing. Then, movement. A shape. Low. Dark. Someone standing near the edge of the clearing. Still. Watching. Logan's entire body tightened, instincts snapping into place before thought could catch up. "Back," he said quietly. Evelyn stepped behind him without question. Titan moved forward. Not aggressive, protective. Positioning himself between Evelyn and whatever stood in the dark. The figure didn't move, didn't speak. But the message was clear. They had been followed. Logan took a step forward, his voice low but steady. "Not your land." No response. Just the rain. Then, the faint sound of a truck door slamming somewhere beyond the trees. Another shape moved in the distance, more than one. Logan's mind calculated instantly. Too many angles, too little visibility, no advantage. "We're leaving," he said, turning slightly. "Now." Evelyn didn't argue. Titan didn't hesitate. They moved, fast, down the slope across the clearing toward the truck, behind them. Footsteps. Faint. Following. Not running. Not chasing. Just staying close. Enough to pressure. Enough to remind them they weren't alone. Logan reached the truck and opened the passenger door, helping Evelyn inside quickly. "Get down," he said. She did. No questions. Titan jumped in beside her. Logan moved around the front, slipping into the driver's seat, already turning the key. The engine roared to life. Headlights cut through the rain. And for a split second, Logan saw them. Two figures standing at the edge of the trees, faces hidden, watching. The kind of stillness that wasn't curiosity. It was control. Logan shifted into gear and pulled out hard, tires spinning slightly before gripping the mud and pushing forward down the narrow road. He didn't look back. Didn't need to, because whatever was behind them wasn't finished. Inside the truck, Evelyn clutched the edge of the seat, her breathing uneven. "They didn't say anything," she whispered. Logan kept his eyes on the road. They didn't have to. Titan pressed against her side again, steady, grounding, alive, despite everything. Logan glanced over briefly. The dog's shoulder was damp, too damp, darker than rain alone. Logan's eyes sharpened. "Titan," he said quietly. The dog didn't respond, didn't move. But Logan saw it now, a thin line of blood along Titan's side, barely visible in the low light. Not deep, but fresh. "Damn it!" Evelyn's head snapped toward him. "What is it?" "Nothing serious," Logan said quickly. "Just a scratch." But his tone had changed, sharper, colder, because now it wasn't just a warning, it was contact. Someone had gotten close enough, too close. Logan's grip tightened on the wheel as the truck sped down the mountain road, rain hammering the windshield. "They're not just watching," he said. "They're sending a message." Evelyn looked at Titan, her hand gently resting near the injured spot, careful not to press. "They hurt him," she whispered. Logan didn't respond right away, because something deeper had already taken hold, something old, something trained, the part of him that didn't step back, didn't retreat, didn't forget. His eyes stayed fixed on the road ahead. "They made a mistake," he said quietly. Evelyn looked at him. "What do you mean?" Logan's voice didn't rise, didn't harden. It simply became certain. "They just made it personal." Thunder cracked across the mountains again as the truck disappeared into the storm. Behind them, the ridge faded into darkness, but the truth they carried with them was no longer hidden, and the people who had buried it had just shown they were still afraid of it. The rain followed them all the way down the mountain. It hammered the truck, blurred the windshield, and turned the narrow road into a slick ribbon of mud and stone. But Logan didn't slow more than necessary. His hands stayed steady on the wheel, his eyes scanning ahead, always ahead. Because that's how you stayed alive. You didn't look back. You moved forward. Beside him, Evelyn sat low in the seat, wrapped in the blanket, one hand resting gently near Titan's side. The dog lay pressed against her, his breathing steady, but his body still alert despite the injury. "Let me see it," Logan said after a moment. Evelyn nodded and carefully shifted the blanket. The cut wasn't deep, a graze, but fresh and deliberate. "They got close enough to touch him," Logan said quietly. Evelyn's voice trembled. "Why would they do that?" Logan didn't answer right away, because the answer wasn't simple. "They wanted us to know they could," he said finally. Silence filled the cab, heavy, uncomfortable, real. Logan turned off the main road and onto a narrower gravel path that led deeper into the valley. The trees thinned slightly here, opening into a small clearing surrounded by low hills. At the center stood a modest cabin, weathered wood, solid structure. Lights off. Private. Evelyn looked up. "Where are we?" "My place, John," Logan said. He pulled the truck to a stop and cut the engine. The rain softened here, reduced to a steady patter against the roof. For a moment, none of them moved. Then Logan stepped out. The cold air hit again, sharper now without the mountain cover. He moved quickly around the truck, opening the passenger door. "Careful," he said, helping Evelyn out. Titan followed, landing lightly despite the injury, though his movements were more measured now. Inside, the cabin was simple, clean, orderly. Every item had its place. Not decorative, functional. Logan moved with quiet efficiency, lighting a lamp, pulling a first aid kit from a cabinet, setting it down on the table. "Sit," he said. Evelyn lowered herself into a chair, Titan immediately positioning himself beside her. Logan knelt, examining the wound more closely. "Just surface," he said. "He'll be fine." Titan didn't flinch as Logan cleaned the cut, his body still, his focus shifting between Logan and the door, as if he refused to fully relax. Even here, even safe. Logan noticed. So did Evelyn. "He doesn't trust that it's over," she said softly. Logan shook his head. "Neither do I." He finished wrapping the bandage and rested his hand briefly against Titan's neck. "You did good." Titan's tail gave a faint, single movement. That was enough. Logan stood and walked to the table where his pack sat. He unzipped it slowly, laying the documents out one by one under the soft light. The room grew quieter, more focused. Evelyn leaned forward. "This is it," she whispered. Logan nodded. "Yeah." He spread out the papers, contracts, logs, reports, all pointing to the same thing. Corruption, deception, control. But something was missing. Logan frowned slightly, flipping through the documents again. "There should be more," he muttered. Evelyn looked at him. "What do you mean?" "If they went this far, there's always a final piece, something they protected more than the rest." Titan stood, suddenly, without warning. His ears lifted, his posture sharpening again, not toward the door this time, toward Logan's pack. Logan paused. "What is it?" Titan stepped closer, his nose lowering toward the bottom of the bag. Then, he nudged it. Hard. The bag shifted slightly. Logan's eyes narrowed. "Hold on." He reached inside, digging deeper, past the documents he had already removed. Then, his fingers hit something solid. Metal. Cold. He pulled it out. A small, sealed container. Military issue. Locked. Logan stared at it for a second, then looked at Titan. "You knew." Titan didn't respond. He didn't need to. Logan set the container on the table. Evelyn leaned closer. "What is that?" Logan exhaled slowly. The part they didn't want anyone to find. He examined the latch. Different from the trunk. More secure. But not impossible. He reached for a tool from the kit. Worked carefully, methodically. Seconds passed. Then, a click. The seal broke. Logan opened it. Inside, a tape recorder. Old. Well-preserved. And beneath it, more documents. Sealed. Official. Logan lifted the recorder carefully, turning it in his hands. "This is it," he said quietly. Evelyn's breath caught. "Does it still work?" Logan didn't answer. He already knew. He set it down on the table and pressed the power switch. For a moment, nothing. Then, a faint hum. Static. And then, a voice. Crackling. Aged. But clear enough. "You don't understand the position we're in." Logan froze. Evelyn covered her mouth. The voice continued. "If this gets out, everything collapses. The land, the contracts, all of it." A second voice, quieter. resistant. "It's wrong, Richard. You can't just—" The first voice cut him off. Cold, controlled. "I already have." Silence, then. The mechanic takes the fall. It's clean. No one questions it. Evelyn's hands trembled. "That's him," she whispered. Logan's eyes darkened. Colonel Richard Vance. Even after all these years. The tone hadn't changed. The recording continued. "And the other one?" the second voice asked. A pause. Then, "He won't be a problem." Logan's chest tightened. His fingers curled slightly against the table. Because he knew. He knew exactly who that other one was. The recording ended with a soft click. Silence filled the room. Heavy. Final. Undeniable. Evelyn lowered her head slowly, tears finally slipping free. "For 40 years, she whispered. 40 years they made him carry that." Logan didn't speak. He couldn't. Because this wasn't just proof, it was confirmation. Everything he had felt, everything he had never been told, was real. Titan stepped closer, pressing against Logan's side again, grounding him, holding him there. Logan exhaled slowly, then straightened. "This changes everything," he said. Evelyn looked up. "What do we do now?" Logan met her eyes, and for the first time since this began, there was no hesitation. "We don't hide it," he said. "We make sure everyone hears it." Outside, the rain finally began to ease, but inside that cabin, the storm had just found its voice. The rain faded into a soft drizzle by morning, leaving the mountains washed clean and quiet. Mist clung low to the valley, drifting between trees like something not quite ready to leave. Inside the cabin, no one had slept much. The tape recorder sat on the table where Logan had left it, silent now, but heavy with everything it carried. Truth. Proof. A voice that had waited 40 years to be heard again. Evelyn sat near the window, wrapped in the same blanket, staring out at the pale light breaking through the clouds. Her face looked different now, still tired, still worn. But something had changed. The weight she had carried alone for decades was no longer hers alone. Behind her, Logan stood near the table, carefully organizing the documents into a single folder. Every page was checked, aligned, secured, not out of habit, out of purpose. Titan lay on the floor nearby, his body resting but not relaxed. His eyes tracked every movement in the room, every sound outside. The bandage along his side was clean, the bleeding stopped, but his awareness hadn't dimmed. It never did. Evelyn turned slightly. "You really think this will be enough?" she asked. Logan didn't look up right away. "Yes." The answer was simple, certain. Evelyn studied him. "They believed him once," she said quietly. "They might again." Logan lifted his head. "No," he said. "Not like this." He tapped the folder lightly. Not with evidence, not with his own voice. A pause, then, and not with me standing there. Evelyn held his gaze for a moment, then nodded. Because she understood what he meant. Not just strength, presence. Truth carried by someone people couldn't dismiss. Logan closed the folder and picked up the tape recorder. "Where?" Evelyn asked. Logan didn't hesitate. "Town Square." Evelyn's breath caught slightly. "Today?" Logan nodded. "They're honoring him this morning." A faint, bitter edge touched Evelyn's expression. "Of course they are." The irony wasn't lost on either of them. a celebration of a man who had built his name on lies. Logan grabbed his jacket, slipping the folder inside. "We go now," he said. Titan stood immediately. Ready, always ready. The town square sat at the center of the valley, framed by low buildings, a small church, and a wide open space where people gathered for everything from markets to memorials. Today, it was full. Flags lined the edges of the square, their colors bright against the gray sky. Folding chairs were set up in rows, filled with townspeople dressed in clean clothes, their voices low with quiet conversation. At the front, a small stage had been assembled, and on it, Colonel Richard Vance, older now, gray-haired, but still standing tall, his posture straight, his presence commanding in the way people had come to expect. Respected, admired, untouchable. Logan parked a block away. He stepped out of the truck, adjusting the folder under his arm. Evelyn followed, slower but steady. Titan moved beside her immediately. Close. Protective. They walked toward the square together. As they approached, people began to notice. First the dog, then Logan, then Evelyn. Whispers spread quietly through the crowd. "Is that? I thought she left. What's she doing here?" Evelyn didn't look at them, didn't slow. For the first time in years, she didn't shrink. Logan walked beside her, calm, controlled, every step measured. Titan matched their pace, his head level, his eyes scanning, his presence unmistakable. They reached the edge of the crowd and kept going, through it, straight toward the stage. At the front, a man at the podium was speaking. "A pillar of this community, a man whose service and dedication have shaped this town for decades." His voice faltered as he noticed movement, as the crowd shifted, as attention turned. Vance looked up and saw them. For a fraction of a second, something broke through his expression. Not recognition, not confusion, fear. Then it was gone, replaced by control. But Logan saw it. That was enough. They stopped just a few feet from the stage. Close enough. Visible. Unavoidable. The speaker hesitated. "Can I help you?" Logan didn't answer him. He looked directly at Vance. "You can step down," Logan said. The words weren't loud, but they carried. The crowd went quiet. The kind of quiet that spreads fast. Vance straightened slightly. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice smooth, practiced. "Do I know you?" Logan didn't react, but Evelyn stepped forward. "You know me." The voice cut clean through the silence. Vance's eyes shifted to her, and this time, there was no mistaking it. He knew exactly who she was. "Evelyn Carter," he said slowly. A faint smile touched his lips. "I was told you'd moved away." "I was told a lot of things," she replied. The crowd shifted again, closer now, listening. Logan stepped forward beside her. 40 years ago, he said, his voice steady, "you stood in front of this town and accused an innocent man of crimes he didn't commit." Murmurs rippled outward. Vance's smile faded slightly. "I think you're mistaken." Logan didn't let him finish. "No," he said. "You're the one who made the mistake." He reached into the folder, pulled out the tape recorder, held it up. "This is your voice." The air changed, immediate, tangible. Vance's posture tightened. The crowd leaned in. Logan set the recorder on the edge of the stage, pressed play. Static. Then, the voice clear enough. "The mechanic takes the fall. A ripple of shock moved through the crowd. Evelyn closed her eyes for just a second, then opened them again. Stronger. He won't be a problem. Vance's face went pale. The recording ended. Silence crashed down over the square. Logan looked at him. Didn't raise his voice. Didn't need to. Say it, he said. Vance didn't respond. The crowd waited. Pressure built. Visible. Heavy. Say it, Logan repeated. Evelyn stepped forward. You took everything from us, she said. My husband. His name, his life. Her voice didn't break. Not this time. Say it. Vance's eyes moved across the crowd. Faces, questions, doubt. And for the first time in 40 years, he had nowhere to stand. His shoulders dropped, just slightly, then more. He started, stopped, swallowed, then, yes. The word barely came out, but it was enough. I did. The crowd erupted, not loud, not chaotic, but in something deeper. Shock, disbelief, truth breaking through years of silence. Logan didn't move. Evelyn didn't move. Titan stood firm beside them, because this wasn't about noise. It was about the moment everything changed, and there was no going back. The sound didn't come all at once. It broke apart. Fragments of voices, sharp breaths, chairs scraping against the ground, someone whispering too loudly, someone else saying nothing at all. But underneath it, silence. A heavy, stunned silence that settled over the town square, like a weight no one knew how to lift. Colonel Richard Vance stood on the stage, smaller now, not physically, but in everything else. The posture that once carried authority had collapsed into something uncertain. His shoulders no longer held the same strength. His eyes no longer commanded the crowd, because they weren't looking at him the same way anymore. They were seeing him. For the first time. Evelyn Carter stood just a few feet away, her hands steady at her sides, her chin lifted slightly, not in defiance but in something quieter, something earned. For 40 years, she had been the one people looked away from, the one they whispered about, the one they judged without question. Now, no one was looking away, not from her. From him, Logan didn't move, didn't step forward, didn't push the moment. Because this part didn't belong to him. It belonged to her. Titan stood at his side, silent, still, his presence grounded and unwavering. His bandaged side rose and fell slowly with each breath, but his focus never broke. The world had shifted, and he knew it. Evelyn took a slow step forward. The gravel beneath her shoes made the faintest sound, but in the silence, it carried. 40 years, she said. Her voice didn't rise, didn't need to. I lived with what you said about my husband. Her eyes stayed on Vance. You told this town he was a thief, a liar, a man who betrayed his work, his people. A pause. You said it like it was truth. Vance didn't respond. Couldn't. Because the truth had already been spoken. Not by him, by his own voice. Evelyn's gaze didn't waver. And they believed you. She turned slightly, her eyes sweeping across the crowd, not accusing, not angry, just honest. I lost everything because of that. No one spoke. No one moved. Even the wind seemed to hold back. Then Evelyn looked back at Vance. You don't get to keep that lie anymore. The words settled. Final. Complete. Vance lowered his head. Not dramatically, not suddenly, just enough. Enough for everyone to see. That he had nothing left to say, nothing left to defend. The man at the podium stepped back, unsure, his prepared speech forgotten in his hand. A woman in the front row covered her mouth. Another shook her head slowly, as if trying to undo what she had just heard. But no one could, because the truth had already done its work. Logan turned away first, not because the moment didn't matter, but because it did. And he knew when to step out of it. "Come on," he said quietly. Evelyn didn't move right away. She stood there for one more second, one more breath. Then she turned and walked. Not quickly, not slowly, just forward. Through the same crowd that had once watched her fall, now stepping aside, making space. No one stopped her, no one questioned her. They didn't know what to say, because there was nothing left to argue. Titan moved with her, close at her side, his body brushing lightly against her leg, steady, present. Logan followed just behind. Together, they walked out of the square, out of the noise, into something quieter. The town didn't follow. It stayed behind, holding what had just happened, trying to understand it, trying to accept it. Outside the square, the air felt different, lighter, cleaner. Evelyn stopped near the edge of the road, her shoulders rising slightly as she took a deep breath, the kind she hadn't taken in years. Logan stood beside her, not speaking. He didn't need to, because he felt it too, that shift, that release. Titan leaned gently into Evelyn again. She placed her hand on his head, her fingers resting there longer this time. "You knew," she whispered softly to him. The dog didn't respond. He simply stayed, because that was enough. Logan looked out toward the mountains in the distance, the same mountains that had held secrets for decades, the same ridge where everything had been hidden, and now uncovered. He reached into his jacket and pulled out the photograph again. His father, standing there, before everything had been taken. Logan studied it for a long moment, then folded it carefully. Not away, not forgotten, but held, finally understood. "They didn't just erase him," Logan said quietly. Evelyn looked at him. "No," she said. "They tried." A pause. "But they failed." Logan nodded once. Because she was right. The silence around them wasn't empty. It was full. Full of everything that had finally been said. Everything that had finally been seen. For the first time in years, Logan's chest didn't feel tight. Didn't feel like it was holding something back. He exhaled slowly, and the breath didn't catch. It didn't break, it just left. Peace, not complete, not permanent, but real, and beside him, Titan stood, still, loyal, unshaken. Because through everything, that had never changed. The mountains looked different now. Not because they had moved, not because the trees had thinned or the sky had cleared, but because the weight that had once settled over them had lifted. Weeks passed, then months. And the story that began in a forgotten cellar spread far beyond the valley. It reached county offices, then state lines, then further. Newspapers picked it up first, quiet articles tucked into the corners of print. Then came the larger pieces. Investigations reopened, records re-examined. Names that had been buried in silence were spoken again. This time, with truth. Evelyn Carter stood on the same land she had been forced to leave. But everything had changed. The farmhouse was gone. sold, stripped, and cleared by developers who had since stepped back under mounting pressure and legal review. What remained was the ridge, the hillside, and the cellar. The place no one had wanted. The place that had held everything. A small wooden house now stood not far from it. Simple, strong, built with intention. Morning light filtered across the porch where Evelyn sat. A piece of fabric draped across her lap, needle in hand. Her fingers moved slowly, carefully, threading patterns into cloth the same way time had once threaded patience into her life. But now, there was no waiting, no quiet suffering, only living. A young girl sat beside her, watching closely. "Like this?" the girl asked, holding up a crooked stitch. Evelyn smiled gently. "Close," she said, "but don't rush it. Let your hands feel where the thread wants to go." The girl nodded, concentrating. Behind them, the door creaked open. Logan stepped out. The same man, but not the same weight. His posture was still firm, his presence still steady, but the tension that once lived in his shoulders had softened. Not gone, but quieter, manageable. He leaned against the porch railing, looking out toward the ridge, toward the cellar. It had been preserved, not covered, not hidden again. The stone cleaned, the door restored, not as a secret, but as a marker, a reminder. Titan moved beside him, his stride strong again, the injury long healed. His coat caught the sunlight, dark and sharp, his eyes alert as ever. Logan reached down, resting his hand on the dog's neck. "You kept pulling," he said quietly. Titan didn't respond. He never needed to, because Logan understood now. The dog hadn't just led him to Evelyn. He had led him to the truth, to his father, to the part of himself that had been waiting just as long. Evelyn looked over at them. "You going up there today?" she asked. Logan nodded slightly. "Yeah." The girl glanced up. "To the basement?" Evelyn smiled faintly. "We don't call it that anymore," she said. The girl tilted her head. "What is it then?" Evelyn looked out toward the ridge, her eyes soft but certain. "It's where the truth waited." The girl nodded slowly, as if that made perfect sense, because sometimes it did. Logan stepped off the porch, Titan moving with him as they walked the familiar path up the hill. The air was warmer now, the ground dry, the trees quiet in a way that felt different from before. Not watchful, not heavy, just still. They reached the cellar. Logan paused at the door. Not because he needed to, but because he chose to. Then he opened it. Inside, the space was clean now, ordered, preserved. The shelves stood as they had. The trunk remained in its place, closed, no longer hiding anything. Logan stepped inside, Titan following close. He walked to the back, to the spot where everything had changed. And for a moment, he just stood there, not searching, not questioning, just remembering. His father, Evelyn's husband. All the names that had been buried under something they didn't deserve, now restored, now seen. Logan reached into his pocket and pulled out the photograph one last time. He looked at it, then placed it gently inside the trunk. Not to hide it, but to return it, to where it belonged, with the truth. Titan sat beside him, quiet, steady, always steady. Logan exhaled slowly, and this time, there was nothing left to hold. He turned and stepped back toward the door, Titan rising with him. Outside, the light stretched across the ridge, clear, open. Evelyn stood in the distance, au chaud, the young girl beside her, both watching, waiting, not for answers, for life. Logan walked back toward them, each step steady, each step forward, and behind him, the cellar remained, not forgotten, not feared, but understood. Because it had never been worthless. It had never been empty. It had been holding something far greater than shelter. It had been protecting truth, protecting names, protecting everything that time had tried to erase. And now, nothing was hidden anymore. If you believe truth always finds its way back, type yes in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. And if stories like this mean something to you, about standing your ground and protecting what's right, stick around and subscribe. There's more coming.